A new rover has a tradition to live up to and a promise to fulfill. Over generations, rovers have borne the famous Viking ship symbol. They've been distinctive and leaders in their field. The rover name has a powerful reputation that's been built from its performance on the world's racetracks and rally circuits. The Rover 800 series is more than a new car, it's a new breed of car, created to meet the most exacting demands of today's executive lifestyle. 4 totally individual models have been designed to create this impressive range. The 820i is powered by a new 2-litre 16-valve twin overhead camshaft engine with an electronic fuel injection system for instant response. There's a 5-speed manual gearbox, central door locking and electrically controlled front windows and heated door mirrors. The 820SI, powered by the same combination of engine and transmission, has a higher level of trim, glass sunroof and electrically powered windows all round. The Rover 825i features the exciting all-new lightweight 2.5-litre 24-valve V6 engine, an advanced electronic fuel injection system and automatic 4-speed gearbox fitted as standard, with an optional 5-speed manual transmission. Self-levelling rear suspension, trip computer and vehicle condition monitor for instant driver information. And finally, the Rover Sterling, the ultimate in luxury and performance. The same engine and transmission, but with anti-lock brakes and features such as air conditioning, cruise control, all-leather trim, power glass sunroof, and electronically adjustable seats for driver and passengers. During this program, we'll examine several key component systems of the car, how they work and how they're serviced. This first program on the Rover 800 series will include a brief tour around the 2-litre and 2.5-litre engine compartments. But first, let's take a look at the inside of the car and go through some of the controls, paying particular attention to the electrics and electronics. The Rover Sterling offers a relaxing environment which serves every personal preference. Advanced technology has created features such as electrically adjustable seats and door mirrors, combined with an electronic memory that enables the driver to recall his personal seat and mirror positions at the touch of a button. So, what's the secret? Well, let's look a little closer. Electric motors under the squab drive the seat, 2 for the height, 1 for the forward and backward movement, and 1 in the backrest for the recline. And finally, there's a pump which operates an inflatable pad for lumbar support. This is operated by 2 switches on the door side of the seat. Up to 4 drivers can store their personal seat positions into an electronic memory, which also aligns the door mirrors once they've been set, using this button on the driver's armrest. Seat and mirror settings can only be programmed with the ignition switch to auxiliary and the isolator switch pressed to the on position. To store your personal position, simply adjust the seat and mirrors to your requirement and press the store button, together with one of the 4 memory buttons
for 1 to 2 seconds. Your personal position is now stored. The front seat passenger in the Rover Sterling has the same choice of electrically controlled seat positions, the only difference being that there's no memory or seat heating facility. The rear seat passengers in the Rover Sterling also have a choice of seating position. This is controlled electrically by switches in the door. The windows, of course, are also power operated with all the normal switches. A full set for the driver and individual controls for each passenger. A combined rear seat and passenger rear window isolator switch is provided to prevent inadvertent rear seat adjustment or window opening whilst the car is in motion. The driver can also heat the squab of his seat with this control on the central console, and it will automatically switch off when the seat temperature reaches 31 degrees centigrade. The mirrors are also heated to clear frost or condensation. The brain for the seat and mirror positions, the memory unit, together with the relay box, is located under the right-hand seat. There's a fast check unit available to test each part of the circuit. Again, on the Rover Sterling, there are 2 buttons located to the rear of the passenger seat controls. These control the electric slide tilt sunroof. This is manually operated on other models. And when it's dark, there are a number of devices which add that extra touch of luxury. Footwell illumination for the driver and door sill lights all round. Reading lamps in the front on most models. And in the rear on the Rover Sterling and 825i. All courtesy lights and headlamps remain on for 1 minute after the car has been parked and then switch off automatically. The headlamps have a power wash as standard on the Rover Sterling and 825i, which is controlled by a timer and operates automatically when the lights are on and the screen wash is being used. All 4 doors on the Rover 800 series are fitted with electrically operated high-security locks. 2 conventional keys and, on some models, an infrared signal key are provided. The infrared key is used by directing the transmitter through a side window towards a receiver adjacent to the interior mirror. The signal is effective up to a range of 6 feet and is particularly useful at night and during adverse weather. The infrared system incorporates nearly 60,000 different combinations, so if you attempt to open the doors with the wrong transmitter, after 3 attempts the infrared system will shut down and the doors can only be opened using a conventional key. However, once opened, the system is automatically reactivated, allowing the correct infrared key to be used. A single fast check unit is available to test both the conventional and infrared door locking systems. The control box for central door locking is located just above the fuse box beneath the fascia. The Rover 800's heating system incorporates sliding controls for temperature and airflow, plus on the Rover Sterling at 825i, a fully variable control for fan speed. Air conditioning is controlled by push buttons. The evaporator is located inside the heater unit. The receiver dryer is in the offside front wing. And the condenser is fitted in front of the engine. You can get to the charging connections for the high and low pressure lines quite easily. Don't service or depressurize the system without the proper equipment. A fast check has been developed for the air conditioning system which will be available prior to launch. A trip computer is fitted as standard on the Rover Sterling and 825i models. It's set into a panel which also contains the vehicle condition monitor. There's an audible bleep to draw the driver's attention to any problem indicated on the vehicle map. Doors or boot lid not properly closed, failure of a bulb, and so on. The computer has a built-in self-diagnosis facility, which you initiate by inserting a bridging connector between the black and white wires in the diagnostic socket. The computer will then go through a series of tests, highlighting any defects. Obviously, the car should be driven for a short distance to check the fuel and distance inputs. Setting the computer is similar to a digital watch. To set the correct time, simply press the Time button and then the Set button. Enter the time using the 24-hour clock format, then press Set again to start the clock. The vehicle condition monitor continuously checks its own system. A further check can be carried out by bridging the black and red wires in the diagnostic socket. All vehicle monitor functions will then flash and continue to do so until they are reset by operating their relative controls. For example, switching side lights on and off and opening and closing doors.
Cruise control, fitted only to the Rover Sterling, has 3 driver-operated controls, the on-off switch on the fascia and the set and resume buttons on the steering wheel. When the system is switched on, the driver can maintain a certain speed by pressing the set button. This will continue until either the accelerator or the brake is operated. After braking, the set speed will resume only when the resume button is pressed. The ECU monitors all input signals and issues regulating instructions to the actuator. It will only allow the system to operate at speeds above 25 miles an hour. A cruise control fast check is also available, and using a T-in connector between the ECU and the vehicle harness, fault diagnosis can be carried out in the normal way. The instrument panel on the Rover 800 carries a wealth of information, yet has a well-spaced, easy-to-read layout. 8 bulbs are used for panel illumination, and the gauges themselves are electromechanical, which of course removes the need for bulky operating cables and pipes. An instrument fast check unit is available to aid fault diagnosis. It carries out a series of in-depth checks into the instrument panel and its various feedbacks. During some of these checks, it will be necessary to remove the panel itself. Incidentally, all the electrical harness connectors on the car have total terminal security. Each connector is double locking, colour-coded, and uniquely shaped to match its partner. The radio aerial is combined with the heating element of the rear screen. Incidentally, the heating element itself will switch off automatically after 10 minutes, a useful aid for forgetful drivers. There's an isolator within the aerial circuit situated in the boot next to the interior light. This picks out the radio signals from electrical interference and amplifies the signal to the radio. So now we've covered all the major controls and their associated electrics, and we'll move on to make a brief tour round the engine compartments. Before we get into detail about the technical features and component systems of the Rover 800 series, we'll take a look at some of the under-bonnet components which will be unfamiliar to you. We'll also describe any regular service operations along the way. At first glance, the under-bonnet view of the 2.5-litre models looks rather awesome. But if you break the components down into their various systems, the whole thing becomes much simpler. Most routine servicing jobs have been designed with the technician in mind. Practically every repair operation is capable of being completed with the unit in situ. The most dominant feature is the 2.5-litre V6 engine itself with its front and rear camshaft covers. Positioned neatly between the V formation of the 2 cylinder banks is a compact manifold assembly protected by this cover plate. The oil level dipstick is within easy reach, and the oil filler cap is here on the front cam cover. The alternator is located at the front of the engine. To adjust the drive belt, you first slacken the adjuster and pivot bolts, and with the help of the deflection marks, moulded on the timing belt lower cover at 5mm intervals, carefully turn the tensioner bolt to achieve the correct belt deflection. When the correct deflection is achieved, retighten the bolts in the usual manner. The power steering pump is immediately adjacent to the alternator. Again, the adjustment is easy. Slacken the adjuster and pivot bolts, and with a socket lever, apply leverage through the tensioning lug to tighten the belt. A separate set of deflection marks is there to help you. For those models fitted with air conditioning, the compressor, situated at the front of the engine, is driven via a belt from the crankshaft pulley. To adjust this belt, just loosen the lock nut on the jockey wheel and turn the adjusting bolt to obtain the necessary belt deflection.
A conventional electronic ignition system is fitted, which requires no routine maintenance. Ignition timing is checked at the after-sales service and at every service after 24,000 miles. The electronic distributor, which is similar in design to the one fitted on the Rover 213, is at the rear of the front cylinder bank and is driven by the camshaft. Although the distributor needs no regular maintenance, it is important to check that the breather hole and the ventilation plug on the cap are free from any obstruction. All plug leads are clearly marked with the numbers of their respective cylinders, and the firing order is indicated on the distributor cap. The spark plugs are set deep into the cylinder head with caps of moulded rubber and a thumb grip for removal and replacement. The oil filter unit also incorporates an engine cooler. It's mounted externally and is freely accessible from underneath the car. The paper element filter is replaced by first removing the 3 nuts which retain the base plate, taking particular note of the O-ring and pressure spring. A plug is provided to drain the oil prior to removing the old filter element. The reservoir for the brake master cylinder also holds the fluid for the clutch master cylinder. An actuator switch illuminates the instrument panel warning light when the fluid level is low. You should use only DOT4 brake fluid in this system. DOT4 has a higher specification than the DOT3 fluid that has been in general use in the past few years. Positioned on the right-hand wing valance are 3 reservoirs. The largest is the engine coolant expansion tank, which has a normal pressure cap and a low-level warning actuator. To drain the coolant, first carefully release the pressure cap. Then remove the radiator bottom hose. Drain the coolant through each of the cylinder bank drain plugs. Before refilling the system through the coolant tank, first open the bleed valve in the water passage until you can see that all the air has been expelled from the system, and make sure to maintain the 50% antifreeze solution. Next to the expansion tank is the power steering fluid reservoir. Remember to keep the fluid level between the minimum and maximum marks located on the dipstick, using only the recommended fluids. The last of the 3 reservoirs in this area is for the screen washer fluid. You can't see it because it's housed in the wheel arch compartment, but the filler neck protrudes up the side of the valance. So far as the air intake system is concerned, the first thing you'll notice is that the air cleaner is unfamiliar in shape, but it works in exactly the same way as a conventional filter. The filter is replaced by first slackening the 4 screws and removing the cover, noting the sealing ring in the rim. Simply pull the large spring clip and remove the filter. Clean air is drawn from the filter into the throttle body assembly, which incorporates a number of devices such as the throttle damper, the bypass valve, which controls the fast idle speed during engine warm-up, and an electronic idle speed control valve to maintain consistent idle speeds when the engine is at normal running temperature. The only adjustment you're ever likely to carry out on the throttle body is to the base idle speed, which we'll come to later in the programme. One thing you're sure to notice in this area is a number of vacuum pipes which join up in close formation and then disappear into a black box. Initially it may look confusing, but first appearances are deceptive. The reason is that a large number of electromechanical components are neatly packaged into one contained area, all fed by the various vacuum pipes. All these pipes are clearly identified with numbers. Among other things, they control the ignition vacuum advance and the exhaust gas recirculation, while others receive and provide information on manifold pressure, idle speed mixture, and so on. A complete chart identifying all the pipes and components is included in the Rover 800 series repair manual. The last component we need to identify in the air intake system is the exhaust gas recirculation, or EGR, valve. Its purpose is to recycle examples of exhaust gas taken from number 6 cylinder and, in doing so, improve the final exhaust emissions. The fuel filter is located on the bulkhead. It receives fuel under pressure from the fuel pump and in turn supplies the 6 injectors via the 2 fuel rails. Maintenance simply involves renewing the filter unit as a whole. This resistor, mounted on the suspension turret, lowers the electrical current supplied to the injectors and prevents damage to the injector coils. This action also allows a faster and more efficient response from the injectors themselves. This fuse and relay box is easily accessible on the left-hand side of the engine compartment. It houses all the high current fuses and the relevant relay units for the engine compartment electrical circuits. It's only one of 2 fuse boxes built into the electrical system of the 2.5 litre models. The other is beneath the fascia. Adjacent to the fuse box is the powerhouse of the anti-lock braking system, the hydraulic modulator. The purpose of the modulator will be covered in more depth in the braking section of the programme. The last component we'll mention during this brief tour of the V6 engine compartment is the actuator for the cruise control. The role of this unit is to maintain a preset vehicle speed without any pressure on the accelerator pedal. It does this very efficiently by receiving electronic control signals from the ECU. The 820i and 820si cars are powered by a new austin-rover 2-litre 16-valve twin overhead camshaft engine designated M16. This engine is the result of extensive development programs benefiting from the latest computer-aided design technology. The latest lean-burn combustion chamber design allows lead-free fuels to be used and is capable of meeting increasingly stringent emission standards, whilst providing excellent power output and fuel economy. The engine compartment view clearly shows the twin overhead camshaft layout of the engine. The rear camshaft operates the inlet valves and the front operates the exhaust valves. The oil filler cap is located in the front cover and the dipstick is positioned centrally at the front of the engine. A programmed ignition system is employed with a conventional distributor cap and rotor arm mounted on the end of the front camshaft. Plug leads are provided with a substantial rubber hand grip to aid removal. HT output is supplied by a conventional ignition coil mounted on the left-hand wing valance. The air intake system comprises an air cleaner, air flow meter, throttle body and plenum chamber. A resonator mounted under the front wing serves to reduce induction noise. As is common on all models in the Rover 800 range, the reservoir for the brake master cylinder also houses the fluid for the hydraulically operated clutch. The fuel filter mounted on the bulkhead is non-serviceable and should be renewed every 24,000 miles. The power steering is belt-driven from the end of the rear camshaft. Belt tension is adjusted by slackening the jockey wheel and turning the adjuster bolt until the correct tension is attained. To simplify power steering fluid level checking, a dipstick is incorporated in the cap. On vehicles equipped with air conditioning, the compressor is located beneath the alternator, both components being driven from a common belt via the crankshaft. Belt tension is achieved by a jockey pulley in exactly the same way as described for the power steering drive belt. Engine coolant is drained through the radiator bottom hose and refilled via the coolant reservoir and expansion tank to the upper level of the indicator. The maintenance-free programmed ignition system employs an electronic control unit, ECU, similar in appearance and function to the units used on Montego and Maestro.
The fuse and relay box on the left-hand wing valance is common across all models in the Rover 800 range and supplements the fuse box mounted beneath the fascia. Just forward of the fuse and relay box is the main harness connector. This serves to join the engine bay wiring harness to the main loom. One last point in this overview of the engine bay: the filler neck for the windscreen wash bottle is located beside the power steering reservoir. The container itself is housed in the wheel arch. Well, that's a brief look at the major underbonnet components of the 2-litre M16 engine cars. A more detailed study of the engine itself will be undertaken in a separate section of the programme. Well, now you've come to the end of the programme, stop the tape and answer the questions in the relevant section of your questionnaire.